Hey guys, do you want to know a quick and easy way to make decisions with confidence and transform your life in a myriad of ways? And keep watching because in this presentation, I'm going to show you a tool that explains how archetypes help you to bring about consistent transformations in your personality so that you can become the best version of yourself. And you can also use this system to create the life that you deserve. If you don't know what archetypes are, I recommend you check out my previous presentation, which was how people pleasers sabotage their lives and how to end it, transform your life, and fulfill your potential. This is now available on YouTube channel, Mastermind Content 333. If you just do a search on Mastermind Content 333, you'll bring up my channel and you can watch the selection of videos on there, including how people pleasers self-sabotage their lives. And I used to be a people pleaser, so I know plenty of ways that we sabotage our lives by trying to please other people. I also know how to end people pleasing tendencies because I lived the experience, and by learning how to shift my mindset from surviving to thriving, I was able to stand in my own power and recognize when I'm people pleasing and when I need to please people. And a simple tool that I use, a simple strategy that I use is, do I have the time, energy, and resources? So, a lot of this self development, working with the archetypes, etc., it's really all about a matter of shifting your mindset from survival mode to thriving mode. It's all a matter of upgrading limiting beliefs and developing emotional intelligence, basically learning how to live life on your terms and not somebody else's terms. So in this video, we're going to touch on some ways that you can do that by using the archetypes model that I've designed. So let me bring up the presentation. I've called this one How to Become the Best Version of Yourself, using archetypes to evolve the personality. The reason I say that is because we evolve the personality by integrating qualities of the archetype. So, first of all, I'm going to briefly explain what archetypes are, but I'm not going to go into it as much depth as I did in the previous presentation. But just to give you a quick overview of what archetypes are, they are recognizable parts of the personality that can be identified by specific thoughts, emotions, and actions, but also attitudes, motivations, and desires. In the mastermind content archetypes model, there are 12 archetypes, and each of which serve a function. So, this is one way you can identify them because a function means that the archetype has to play a specific role in your life. So, you can choose for them to be present. So, for example, if you need to connect with somebody, if your girlfriend or your boyfriend has had a bad day and you need to connect with them, then you need to adopt the everyman so that you listen and so that you can be amiable and cooperative and work with them. So it's no use having the trickster at those moments who's just wanting to mess about and have fun because they're not in the mood to be having fun. So by giving archetypes a function, you also know that when an archetype should be appearing in your life in a specific situation. So then, what if another archetype turns up at that point and makes a mess of what you were supposed to do? Because that archetype may have been triggered by something in the environment which has set off an emotional wound, and it's come from the unconscious and taken possession of the conscious ego. This also happens with archetypes, what Jung called complexes. Archetypes are all also neural networks. They are subtle energies, information stored as memory in your central nervous system. And I intend to do a presentation solely on that topic, delving into that some more at a future point. But what I want to show you today mostly is this bad boy. I've done this diagram of a pyramid that includes all the 12 archetypes that feature in the mastermind content archetypes model, and I've called it the evolution of the personality, and that's really what I'm going to be explaining today, how we use archetypes to evolve the personality. So as you can see, this pyramid consists of 12 archetypes. Now the structure from top to bottom, the divine child to the ruler, and in between, needs to be stabilized for us to be able to function properly, for us to keep our mental and physical health in good condition. So this means that we need to develop, excuse me, this means that we need to develop the qualities of each of the archetypes within this pyramid. So at the bottom there, you can see the divine child. Now, the divine child represents our inner child, our essence, but it also means potential. So if you think about it, that children exist in a state of potential until we mature and develop the other qualities that belong to those other archetypes. The divine child serves a function just as much as the others, though. And you will know the divine child is present when you have an original thought or just an idea that fills you with excitement or passion. So the divine child is basically an idea, a goal, or a desire. They're the three things I want you to remember. The divine child is an idea, a goal, or a desire. And all these things exist in the mind as potential until they are manifest. As an archetype, you can identify the divine child as oh, I've missed a bit. Sorry. Okay, yeah. So I've said it emerges an idea, a goal, or desire that exists as state of potential, but it also appears as intuition and divine inspiration. So sometimes you know that we get this intuition and we're not quite sure what it means yet because it's not fully come to conscious awareness. Whereas on the flip side, divine inspiration are those downloads that you get where for a brief moment you understand everything, but then all that information fades. That's annoying, isn't it? Well, that's also the divine child coming at you in a burst of energy. You can also identify the divine child as, or you can determine the divine child as that fire in your belly, that passion that drives you forward towards your goal, and it gives you the hope and optimism. So, as a baby, we are born as a divine child and we are full of potential, but at the same time, we're essentially useless. As an infant, you can't do anything without relying on other people to do it for you. So you become codependent until you learn how to do things for yourself. And codependency is one of the ways to identify the divine child as an archetype. Other ways to identify the divine child as an archetype are childish behaviors, of course, but things like being autonomous, living in the moment and inner peace. When you have a sense of freedom, you are fearless and carefree. Carefree is a good one. When you've been your authentic self, when you've been genuine, this is the divine child. But it can also show up as childish behaviors. It can be a bit deceitful, just as children are. Dissociation, when you dissociate from reality. So I live with my mother at the minute because she's got Alzheimer's and she needs looking after full time. When I see the divine child in her, it's because she's not developed other parts of the personality that you see in this pyramid. She's not developed these other parts of her personality, and the few that she did develop have now are not in use anymore. So she's regressed into this personality of the divine child, the attitudes of the divine child. So there's some ways to identify the when the divine child is developed and when it's undeveloped. But for now, really, what I want to focus on is the divine child as a function of an idea, a goal, or a desire. Because when you have an idea, a goal, or desire, you have to take the appropriate action and adopt the appropriate attitudes, which a child or the divine child cannot do. It relies on the other archetypes, just as a child relies on other people. So, as children, we exist in a state of potential, and that potential in us needs to be nurtured, needs to be nourished, needs to be developed so that we can reach our full potential. And when the divine child is developed, then you feel that sense of hope and optimism that your goal, idea, or desire will be realized. It becomes realized when the ruler decides to align behaviors that make the potential of makes the idea, goal, or desire a lived experience. So the divine child relies on the decision making capacity of the ruler at the top. The ruler needs to make the right decisions and relies on the feedback of all these other archetypes, the qualities within these other archetypes, to align the behaviors with your intention to fulfill your desire. And if you have not integrated the qualities of these other archetypes that enable you to manifest your idea, goal, or desire, then the ruler is not able to make the right choices or the right decisions. Because when you realize the divine child becomes the ruler, which is what I'm trying to show with this curvy white arrow here. Basically, these are connected when the ruler, which is the mind, is aligned with the divine child, which is the heart. The heart and mind are together in unison. You can also say that the divine child and the ruler are two in one, or the alpha to the omega. So in alchemy, this is illustrated by the symbol of the Ouroboros. The Ouroboros is a symbol that essentially indicates the cycles of life and death, which are the transformation of energy. So when you have a particular attitude or a behavior, that is an existing form of energy. But then you get more information into your neural networks and you change your attitude or you change your behavior, and that old attitude dies and is replaced with a new attitude, or that old behavior or habit dies and is replaced by a new energy. That's a transformation of energy. So the Ouroboros also represents the continuity of energy, or the eternity, because eternity is the wisdom, which I'll get onto a little bit later, or wholeness and unity. And the dragon also encourages you to reflect on cycles of life. So if something's not going well, some self-reflection, which involves saying things like, okay, how did I create this scenario? How did I get here? What were my thoughts, actions, and emotions that is creating this experience of reality? Or it may be that you react angrily to something which is disproportionate to the actual situation, and you think, okay, so what is it that's triggering me then? What did that person say, or what happened that is triggering me. Now I know what triggers me, how well, I can identify better what might have caused that trigger. And again, this is what the archetypes show you. I explain the potential causes of why an archetype is wounded. So let's move on. Um, this is how to identify the ruler. So as I've mentioned before, the ruler is responsible for making decisions. It's the decision making faculty of the mind, of the conscious mind. It's the neocortex. And from the potential of the divine child, it's also how we experience reality. Because when we make a decision, we make a decision that this is the reality that we're going to experience. So that potential becomes realized. And as an archetype, the ruler functions um, as the decision maker, but decisions can be made through either thought or feeling. So an idea, a goal, or a desire can also be intuition, and that's the intuition of the divine child being felt by the conscious mind, which you then have to make a decision upon. Do you trust your intuition, or do you not trust your intuition? This is a question that most of us ask ourselves. So when you listen to the guidance of your divine child, your tuition, you're actually more likely to make the right choices. And anybody who follows their intuition religiously will tell you that. They've told me that, and then I started trusting my intuition more, and I find that most times my intuition is right. But you need a strong ruler to be able to trust your intuition, because sometimes the intellect is not in agreement and the intellect will resist. So you need to have a strong ruler that's prepared to listen to that inner voice and be guided by it. So the ruler corresponds to the neocortex. Now, ideally, you experience life predominantly with the neocortex, because this is where we are able to reason, rationalize, apply logic, and plan. But the neocortex can be hijacked by the let me bring this next slide up. Can be hijacked by the limbic system, which corresponds with the archetypes of the warrior and the philanthropist, which I will talk about in another video. For now, all you need to know is that the warrior dictates your motivations and the philanthropist is your emotional side. So if your rule is not strong, then it's more likely to be overwhelmed by emotions. And it's also likely to be misled by your motivations. However, when the warrior and the philanthropist are developed, then your motivations and emotions are also strong and they can then benefit the ruler. They actually come together. You see, all the archetypes underneath the ruler, all these energies, all the qualities feed into the ruler, unless they're hijacked by the warrior or the philanthropist. So, to sum that up, essentially, the divine child is your desire, the ruler is the decision maker. The quality of your decisions determines whether or not you fulfill your desire. So, a desire is a need, normally an emotional need or a physical need, something that gives your life meaning. And that's something that the divine child symbolizes. It gives your life meaning. But you fulfill your potential when your ruler archetype makes decisions that align with your behaviors. Sorry, makes decisions that align your behaviors with your desire. The divine child then becomes the ruler. So the divine child is a state of potential. The ruler is the lived experience. The ruler is how you experience reality. Look at that word reality. Real, like Real Madrid. It means royal. in Spanish. Royalty is associated with crown, which can be transferred to the spiritual meaning of a crown chakra, which means awareness of higher consciousness, of your superconscious, the illuminated mind. So a lot of these things that a lot of the language that we use today is actually symbolic, that goes through a lot of different disciplines. And this, you understanding some of the symbolism helps you to work out what things mean, and also helps you to understand yourself better. So the royal road, you may have heard of the royal road. This is when the decisions made by your ruler are aligned with the demands of the divine child, when you are connected to your true nature, to your essence, that inner voice that guides you, your inner wisdom. So this is one way that we can use the archetypes tool to fulfill your potential. However, manifesting your desires is not always straightforward. Oftentimes you need to rely on the qualities of the other archetypes before you can get from where you are to where you want to be. So when you were an infant child, you relied on other people to fulfill your desires. The same is true for the personality that represents the divine child. So remember, the divine child is your essence. A thought or desire cannot do anything by itself. It relies on certain behaviors, attitudes, emotions, motivations, and emotions of other archetypes. What's more, the qualities the other archetypes give you feed into the ruler. Thus, the decisions the ruler makes are determined by your capacity to access the other archetypes. Not only to access the qualities with other archetypes, but to integrate them into conscious awareness, to make them available to the neocortex, or somewhere around your prefrontal cortex. So, um, what do I mean by qualities? Well, let me bring up the next slide, because this is an excerpt from the Mastermind Content Archetypes tool. Now you can see there are two columns, developed and undeveloped, and in each list there are a selection of words. Well, these words represent attributes that belong to humankind. So we can see here with curiosity, self-discovery, building a self-identity, focus, integrity. These are what I determine as qualities, both qualities that show up when the archetype is developed and qualities that typically show up when the archetype is undeveloped. Now, if we take the example of the explorer, you can see that curiosity and self-discovery are features of this archetype. So these features are bits of information that are communicated via neural networks. These qualities the qualities that I talk about are equivalent to information that neuroscientists talk about, in terms of we're taking information from the environment, it's processed and stored as a memory within the central nervous system, and then is retrieved as memory and communicated via neural networks to different parts of the brain. So the information that is communicated through neural networks is only communicated if it is available. If it's not integrated into the conscious personality, or it's not been developed enough for you to recognize as something that you're able to do, then it probably won't get to your neocortex. So it needs to be integrated into the conscious mind. When these qualities are not integrated, then they tend to be in an immature state, an emotional immature state. So that's when the limbic system takes over, or the reptilian brain, the instinctive actions take over. So just to give you an example of how this archetypes tool works, the function of the explorer is to learn, to research, and to discover opportunities. So, what are good attributes to have to learn and discover opportunities? Well, curiosity is the superpower of the explorer, because the more curious you are, then the more willing you are to go and learn. And don't forget, sometimes when we are learning, we can hit challenging points in the process. And when we do that, we can shy away and move on to something else, which is what the undeveloped explorer does. It doesn't have the integrity and the resilience to break through. Excuse me, I've got an itchy nose. Doesn't have the resilience or the integrity to break through these challenging situations. It can't cope with the stress and the anxiety. So, whatever quality is present within the particular archetype is then fed to the top of the pyramid to the ruler, the decision making faculty of the brain, or it gets hijacked by the limbic system. So hopefully that makes sense and gives you a good example of how um, the archetypes work. I just threw this one in here because I just wanted to make the point that the amygdala, when the amygdala does sense a threat to your physical and emotional well-being, it triggers the fight, flight, or freeze stress response. Now, this will happen mostly when we have what we call emotional wounds or emotional traumas, whatever you want to call them. Basically, the um, undeveloped qualities within any particular archetype. So when you do act in a childish way or in a rational way, when your amygdala takes over, when your emotions take over or your instincts take over, you know that there's an archetype there that's undeveloped and working on. And the reason why this happens is because in childhood, we don't have the ability to articulate or understand what is happening to us. So those earliest memories get repressed and are not matured, or they're just never accessed in the first place, or they could be forgotten or ignored, they could be repressed. So until those memories are given a new perspective, those parts of your personality are matured, then you will continue to respond in infantile and irrational ways. So what I'm talking about here are those moments of madness or self-sabotage, self-neglect, anger, frustration, things like this. When you don't get what you want and you retaliate or you storm out, these are the times when you need to connect with your feelings and observe why you are reacting this way. What happened in your past to make you behave this way in your present? What is stored in your memory, and what information can you add to upgrade that memory? So this is the illustration of the Mastermind Content Archetypes tool. As you can see in the center, there's a self-ego axis. This is really representing the entire mind, the brain. And around the edges are the 12 archetypes, which then feed into the brain. So as I said, the potential of the divine child relies on the other archetypes to be developed so that your ruler makes the right decisions that will transform your desire to a lived reality and helps you to become the best version of yourself. Now, that sounds a bit like law of attraction, but what the law of attraction practitioners don't mention is that before you can actually manifest the life that you want, you have to heal the wounds, or well, I say we have to heal the wounds. Really, healing wounds is maturing. and emotion, and learning how to live, learning how to cope with your environment, learning how to thrive and not just survive. So the divine child is your potential, but by itself can only give you hope, optimism, and self belief. Your job is to decide on what to do next. In which case, then you have to choose which function or which qualities you need from the other archetypes. And I've found, whilst working with the archetypes for the last 4 or 5 years, that this second tier of 5 archetypes are normally the go-to archetypes in the first instance. Now, that's not always the case, because you may have integrated these already and it's automatic, it's already automated within the ruler. But when we're developing, when we're evolving the personality, then we have to focus on the functionality and the qualities that each of these archetypes offer us. So, as I mentioned before, let's say you've had an idea and let's say you want to make some money. Okay, so this is your idea, this is your goal, this is your desire. And that idea is existing solely as potential in your mind at the moment as the divine child. So, what can you do? So, as I mentioned earlier, the explorer is about discovery, it's about doing research, learning. So you might need to learn a new skill so that you can get a better job to make more money. You may want to research your opportunities to make more money. That would be the job of the explorer. Maybe you need to adopt new habits, in which case you would want to call upon the qualities of the caretaker. The caretaker is responsible for nurturing and nourishing new ways of being. It takes care of the shit that you need to get done. Now, when we need to adopt a new habit, the ego can resist. So the the caretaker needs to be strong enough to recognize, and the caretaker is partly self-aware. It needs to recognize that this is what I need to do to fulfill my desire, to fulfill my goal. I have to be dedicated. I have to respect myself. I have to have patience. I have to be able to nurture my goals. I need to be accountable. I need to be adaptable. Things like this. You can see all those in this list. So can you see how you would use this archetypes tool to decide how you need to be the best version of yourself so that you can manifest your goals? So, for example, if you're deciding to make more money by selling goods or service online, you would then need to um, adopt the qualities of the everyman. I don't think I put that slide in. No. Um, the function of this archetype is to make connections, provide you with qualities of being amiable, cooperative, accommodating, agreeable, and adaptable. So when you need to take action, um, you may feel resistance from the ego, in which case you would need the hero as well as the caretaker. So whereas the caretaker gets you to um, form new habits and consistently perform the tasks that you need to take care of, the hero is your courage or the motivation to it gives you that get up and go. You know those moments where you have something to do, but you feel resistance, you procrastinate, but then you just go, okay, I'm doing it, and you just throw yourself into something. This is what the hero energy is. It doesn't have a plan. It just goes. It just throws yourself into uh, whatever it is you need to do, and then you see what happens. So That's what you do. If you're a procrastinator, then you need to pull on the powers of the hero and just get something done. That energy is then going to the ruler. So you're making the decision, okay, I'm going to get this done, and that feeds back into the hero, which then gives you the energy to actually put your foot forward and get going. Again, that's that Oribus, the feedback loop, the cyclical nature of energy. So the hero is essential to self-development. It's essential to achieving the goals that you have in life. It gets you out of your comfort bubble. The divine child sits in the comfort bubble. But if you stay in the comfort bubble, the bubble of comfort, then you're in survival mode. So you have to shift from surviving mindset into a thriving mindset to achieve your desires. So moving along to the last archetype, on the second tier, we have the trickster. And this archetype shows up if you have the qualities um, of being innovative. Sometimes we can't find the opportunities for us, so we have to create something. A bit like I've done with this archetypes model. There are plenty of self-development courses out there, but how many of them are easy um, to engage in and get you from where you are to where you want to be? What tools do they have? I've been innovative in developing my own tools in terms of the archetypes and this evolution of the personality and other tools that I offer as well. So I called them my trickster to be innovative. What I've also found is that the archetypes in this third tier, the lover, creator, and sage, can either aid your endeavor or it can sometimes create blockages because if when they're undeveloped as well, um, you don't have the quality that you need to get to that higher stage. And each of these archetypes here on the second tier feature the same qualities as the lover, sage, and creator in various parts, but then the lover, sage, and creator of their own as well. It just makes you a better version of yourself with these qualities as well. And again, what we're seeing here is that triad of intellect, which is the sage, motivation, which is the creator, and lover, which are your emotions. So the lover, as the emotional side, serves the function of binding you to attachments, the things that you love to do, attitudes and ideas that you cherish. So it gives you when you form an attachment, it gives you an emotional pull towards something that you love to do. So you move towards the things that you're attached to. So if you have attachments that don't serve your best interest to make money, then they're going to block uh, your efforts the five from any of the five archetypes that you engaged on from the second tier. The creator, he motivates you to do things, and his function or his superpower is imagination and foresight. So you can see how that would motivate you when you have um, a vision of what you want to achieve, and you can picture yourself in that moment or what you're going to do when you achieve it, then you can see that motivation. But what the creator can also do is through foresight, it can put you in a position in the future which you may need to overcome. What challenges can you expect to face to make more money? And the creator can help you to come up with a strategy to uh, to achieve your goals. So whereas the hero pushes you into something without a strategy, the creator can give the hero a strategy. So without the strategy, it's preventing the hero from developing. But with the strategy, with the imagination, it allows the hero to move forward with more confidence. And the creator gives you more confidence and it gives you more self belief. When it's undeveloped, you'll lack confidence and you have self doubt. Um, so that was the. I forgot to move these slides on. The lover, the creator, just talked about. The sage is your inner wisdom or your inner knowing. It's self awareness essentially. So this is related to the intellect, like I mentioned with the ruler. So the sage actually, as an archetype, or well, yeah, as an archetype, it serves as a confidant to the ruler. It's your ability to reason, gives you the clarity of thought. And when you have those attributes, then they're passed on to the ruler as well. But when the sage is underdeveloped, then you tend to be judgmental, critical, and cynical, which means that when the explorer, for example, comes up with an opportunity and the sage doesn't like that idea, or even if the divine child says, this is what you need to do, the sage, as the intellect, doesn't like that idea, it overrides your intuition because you're judgmental, critical, and cynical. So their wounds that we've developed, their memories, the learned behaviors that we've developed are to be judgmental, critical. So we have to upgrade those memories to be more accepting of opportunities, of other people, of potential um, goals and things like that, or potential opportunities. So that gives you a brief introduction to all the archetypes and the functions that they serve. Now let's talk a little bit about how we transmute the energies of these archetypes. Because as I mentioned before, they're very subtle energies. These qualities are information. And information are all energy carries information. So you can think of the archetypes as information. Because energy exists initially in a state of potential. To become matter, energy transforms through a series of processes, the transmutation of energy, shown by the law of thermodynamics. So, if we consider the divine child as an idea that exists as thought, and thought is an energy, that initial idea is in a state of potential in the mind. Now, quantum physicists also show that energy exists in bundles of potentia, which you can see the word is taken from the word potential. Quantum physicists also know that energy does not exist without information. All energy contains information. Well, if we get information to the conscious mind that we are aware of or we are unaware of, then information is consciousness. We either have conscious awareness of it or we do something that we're unconscious of the motivation behind or the emotion behind. So energy is driven by consciousness. This is how nature knows how to grow. And we are nature. Humans are nature. So we also rely on the right information within our neural networks in order to grow. And the archetype tool gives you the information, the qualities that you need to become the best version of yourself and fulfill your potential. The law of thermodynamics shows that energy does not die, transforms. That means an idea can only become manifest reality if the appropriate information is added to neural networks. Information that enables you to manifest an idea as a lived experience. Otherwise, you fall short of your goals and desires. So we create our life experiences through thoughts, actions, and emotions. And our thoughts, actions, and emotions are information that is communicated through neural networks. So we can consider archetypes as neural networks. Energy that is not expressed will transform anyway. And then we can either transform and evolve, or we transform and devolve. You'll notice actually that when we devolve, we develop a complex. And a complex is a neurosis. A neurosis such as anxiety. Sorry, a complex transforms into a neurosis. A complex is a childish or irrational behavior. And evolves from a coping mechanism because we repress part of our personality when we were children, and we exchange that personality for a coping mechanism. So this complex is basically an immatured emotion. It's part of our personality that has never been given expression. Now, as I mentioned, all energy transforms, and a complex transforms into a neurosis. Jung noticed that as well. In fact, Freud did as well, I think. And from a neurosis, it transforms into a disease, and a disease into a debilitating disease. So it is in your best interest to develop the parts of your personality by recognizing which archetypes are undeveloped, which emotions still remain in a childish state of conscious awareness. So the divine child is potential, which needs developing through three phases, which are immaturity, maturity, and wisdom. So immaturity is the learning stage. It's the undeveloped potential which needs nurturing, and it needs nourishing, it needs information for you to learn. When you have enough information and you've learned enough to start practicing, this is when you then begin to develop your skills, or you begin to develop your personal skills, your personality. You become a more mature individual. Now, when you practice enough and you've integrated enough information, you develop your skills, then it becomes wisdom. Knowledge put into practice becomes wisdom. Wisdom is the stage of mastery, if you consider it in a learning process. So the conscious personality matures in three stages. It starts off as ignorance, then it becomes the child, the man or woman, and then the wise old man or woman. And this is what we see in myth. So for us to grow, for us to mature and develop, we have to step outside of the bubble of comfort. We have to shift from surviving to thriving. So you can't do that if you don't have the right archetypal qualities, because it's those qualities that give you the capacity to align your behaviors with your intention. And if you don't have the information that enables you to align your behaviors with your intention, then you need to learn them. Then you need to practice them until they become integrated into conscious awareness. And that's what the archetypes tool shows you. The same is true of the divine child. As children, we exist in a state of potential. Potential we have in us needs to be nurtured, nourished, and developed to reach our full potential. And your higher conscious nature is your guide, the inner guide. It helps you to navigate through life. Now, if you listen to your intuition, and you will nourish your emotional well-being, because when you satisfy the demands of your divine child, then you feel satisfied within yourself. You go to bed at night thinking, I did well today. I had a good day. This slide also shows you that when you when the divine child is present, when you have developed the divine child, then you have this inner peace. It's been able, you're able to calm the body and mind. You're free from anxiety, carefree, and you can, as I mentioned before, it cultivates optimism and uh, belief. So the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that there's a section on this Archetypes tool I've titled Gods, and then underneath is either two or three gods, and these are gods from Greek mythology. Now, the reason I do that is because the stories and the images that myth gives us enables us to identify the archetypes easier, and it also helps us to maintain information um, better. There's, if you're reading something, you only have a 10 to 20% memory retention rate. With images and stories, it's up to 60. It's up to 70, at least 74%, between 74 and 90. So that's why I threw that idea in, because it's also interesting, but we can also use these gods to identify and remember the archetype. So I'm going to give you an example of that now. So as you can see with the divine child, since we've been talking about the divine child, I'll use this as an example. The gods I have assigned to the divine child is Hestia and Hermes, really. Dionysus is also there because Hestia gives her seat up in Olympus for Dionysus, but I'm not going to go into that in this presentation. It'll be too long-winded. But essentially, Hestia is known as the goddess of the hearth. The hearth in symbolism is related to the heart, your heart's desire. So Hestia basically represents the intuitive center, and as the goddess of the hearth, she gives life meaning because she provides you with energy. The hearth was the oven in ancient Greece, and this is where Hestia cooks food. The food she prepares is the vital energy that she gives you. It's the emotional nourishment. So if you satisfy her demands and bring home food, information that you can um, develop, that provides you with nourishment, then Hestia will cook it for you. So the food is the seeds of information that you plant in your nervous system. Oops. The fire that is supported by the hearth is also the fire in your belly. Well, that fire in your belly, that passion, is not supported if Hestia is not present. If the passion or if the goal or desire is not there, then there's no fire to support. There's nothing there for you to support. We also see Hermes as the divine child because he basically represents the shifting of energy, the transferal of information, the communication system. And his main symbol is the caduceus, which is this symbol you can see here in his right hand. It's the shaft with the two snakes intertwined, or sometimes you see the one shaft with one snake intertwined. Now, this is known as the caduceus. So it shows that Hermes is the central nervous system, or makes up part of the central nervous system, and he brings food home to Hestia because he's also known as the patron of travelers. Travelers being symbolism for information. He's also the psychopomp that guides the dead to the underworld. I mentioned further down, the underworld is where well, the underworld is where the dead reside, so it's the unlived. So it's the ignored or the forgotten or the unused attributes that are available to humankind that you don't give expression, you don't give them life. So they're essentially known as in symbolism as dead. Hermes is also the god of communication, and the nervous system communicates through neural networks. Now, in Greece, travelers navigated the country via herms, which are signposts. And herms get their name from Hermes, and the key quality of the divine child and Hermes is serving as a guide. So the information on these signposts, on these herms, guide you to in the direction that you want to go. So that's what I was talking about earlier with the divine child serving as a guide. It comes up as intuition or a thought, an idea or a desire, and says, this is the direction I want to go. So essentially, the central nervous system processes, stores, and retrieves information from the experiences that we have, and information is taken from the environment. The underworld symbolizes the environment, the world of the dead, the unlived, because until that information, the archetypal qualities available to the conscious mind are integrated into the conscious mind, they are not lived consciously, they are unconscious. When they're unconscious, we do not know them. They're not given conscious expression, they are not present, they are dead. So, using the symbolism, images, and stories and myth, you can help to speed up your self development journey and realize your goals sooner. It's not an obligation to use the gods and the esoteric symbolism that I offer, but it will be there as a resource if you find it useful or if you're interested. But it does make self development a lot more interesting. You'll just oh, you just get like moments of inspiration all the time. It's brilliant. So if you are interested in the tool that I just showed you and working with the archetypes and using archetypes as a way to become the best version of yourself as a self-development tool, then you may be interested in joining me for the Mastermind Content Essential Self-Development Program from surviving to thriving. And for just £45 a month, you get a whole lot of benefits. So every month, this is how it works. Each month, I'm going to focus on one of the 12 archetypes, a different archetype each month. So you will receive insightful content from me each week to help you understand the most important development goals of the archetype. You'll also receive an overview of the archetype, which outlines the function of each archetype and how you can use it to manage stress. It also explains the potential causes for why the archetype is wounded. There's an overview of the archetype that helps you to identify how it's showing up in your life and snapshots of the development goals that we'll work on with that month within the weekly meetups. But I will be sending the content out the week before so you can read about it and either use that knowledge to for that week or remember a time when that applied to you. Because in the weekly meetups, I want to invite you guys to participate. This is where you will get most bang for your buck because you will have the opportunity to share your wisdom, to share your stories and your experience. So you'll also be teaching myself and everybody else in that group. And everybody's experience is valid, it is vital. But it may be that you also come to a meeting and you have a challenge that you're struggling to overcome. Well, you can tell us about that if you choose to. and I want to create a safe space. The community that I want to develop is a safe space to share your thoughts, challenges, and conflicts so that we can all learn and grow together. So don't be afraid to tell us your stories and share your wisdom because that will help the group. So these weekly meetups I intend to hold on a Thursday at 7 p.m. GMT, and it'll just be for an hour. So I will host the live webinar. I'll give a brief introduction, and then I'll invite, I'm wanting at least 3 people to come and speak for 10 or 15 minutes, tell us their story and share your wisdom. Because I just think that if more people are pulling together as a community, especially if we're doing this online, then it's important that we all get to know one another so we can trust one another to speak out and get the information that we need. Because essentially, look, we, together we are stronger. And I think we can all agree that to get from where we are to where we want to be faster and easier, then we need help. We need the help from other people. So this is a community project, and it'd be brilliant if we can build a community that wants to shift from surviving to thriving so that we can take it from inside the mastermind content community into our wider community and help other people there as well. So, what will you learn? Well, there's a whole host of things that you can learn, like how to identify what is stressing you out and then learn how to manage your stress and develop emotional intelligence. So there's a lot you can learn, excuse me, and there's a lot of benefits you're going to get out of it as well, such as um, becoming the best version of yourself, what this talk has been about, cultivating inner peace, making decisions with confidence, and enriching your quality of life. And for just £45 a month, it's affordable for most people. Plus, you get to meet loads of other cool people, as I mentioned, and some of them may even become lifelong friends. And if they're in your area, then you can meet up for coffee or a beer or whatever, and use one another as accountability partners. So if this sounds good to you, then head over to the Mastermind Content website, click on the link below, and sign up to the self-development program Surviving to Thriving. So if you go to the home page and scroll down a little, then you will find a button marked I want to shift from surviving to thriving. That's I want to shift from surviving to thriving. And you can get that on the Mastermind Content website, which is mastermindcontent.co.uk. Mastermindcontent.co.uk. There are links in the descriptions on the YouTube. So that's basically it. And I hope to see you soon. So take care of yourself, and I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I'm Richard Oldale, and I want to help you to master mind content. Bye bye for now.